Even though I did not make a ton of videos in 2021, I still watched a lot of movies. A lot of good movies. So many that it was kind of challenging deciding what would actually make the main list. So before we get into it, I want to go over some very honorable mentions. And just because they didn't quite make it onto the main list does not mean that I don't love them and think that they are very much worth your time. We've got the Sparks Brothers, Summer of Soul, One for the Road, Listening to Kenny G, Judas and the Black Messiah, Amy Tan, Unintended Memoir, Spencer, Annette, Lamb, The Last Duel, West Side Story, Passing, The French Dispatch, The Tragedy of Macbeth, Parallel Mothers, Flea, Coda, Licorice Pizza, and The Worst Person in the World. Okay, let's get going. Number 10 is a tie between Saint Maud and The Green Knight. The Green Knight was the first film that I saw in theaters after lockdown, and I'm glad because what an absolute spectacle. This film is an adaptation of the 14th century poem about Sir Gawain and his journey to fulfill a Christmas bargain with the mysterious Green Knight. I know a lot of people don't vibe with David Lowery's films, and I feel like I'm back in the same boat that I was in when A Ghost Story came out. I'm all impressed and moved by a movie that a lot of other people are just like, I don't get it. It's not for me. I've heard a lot of stuff like, oh, great looking movie, but I didn't like the story. What was this or that scene about? And why were there giants? And I just feel like I'm taking crazy pills because I feel like it was pretty easy to understand. It's very surreal and artistic, but not so much that you can't feel for the characters or grasp its themes. It has perhaps the best cinematography and editing of 2021, and I found it just to be a really solid fairy tale movie. It explores the themes of life, death, and heroism in a darkly unique way, and what a nice companion piece for Excalibur we finally have. And as an added bonus, great Christmas movie. Okay, so before some of you jump all the way up my ass about how Saint Maud is technically a 2019 film, hardly anyone was able to see this one until its streaming release in February of 2021, so that's why it's on this year's list. Anyway, it's really good. It's about a young woman who decides to become an in-home hospice nurse after a horrible tragedy leads her to believe that God is speaking to her and wants her to convert people before they die. This is such a solid little horror film and made even more impressive by the fact that this is director Rose Glass's first feature-length film. I really hope she makes more because this was quite the debut. Great performances all around, cleverly written, and some final moments that will definitely stay with you long after you've watched it. Number 9. Mass. Mass was written and directed by Frank Kranz, aka this guy from Cabin in the Woods, and oh my god.
Really?
I can't say too much about its premise without spoiling the way that you're supposed to experience this story, but basically it's about 4 people who meet up to discuss a horrific event that they were involved in years before. Hands down some of the best acting of 2021, and thank God because like 90% of this film is people in a room talking. Something that really impressed me about the writing in this movie is how it was able to withhold information in a way that felt completely natural to the conversation. So many times in film and television, dialogue can feel like it's more for the audience than the characters in a way that feels really forced and unnatural. In Mass, nothing that is said in this conversation feels like, okay, we need to say this in a way to get the audience up to speed regardless of whether someone would actually say that in this situation. Everything feels authentic, all the details are shared at the appropriate time, and I wish that I could say more without spoiling the journey that is this incredibly intense conversation. Number 8 is the last tie, I swear to God, between The Lost Daughter and The Power of the Dog. The Lost Daughter is the first film written and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and more from her, please. This was great. It's about a college professor who, while on holiday in Greece, meets a young mother whose very presence causes her to spiral down a not-so-pleasant memory lane of her own past mistakes as a parent, some of which are borderline unforgivable. This film does a phenomenal job at being empathetic to those who struggle as parents and make mistakes without excusing any of the abuse that can take place as a result. You can tell that Maggie Gyllenhaal really understands how children behave, as well as how to direct them in a way that feels grounded in reality. Olivia Colman, Jessie Buckley, and Dakota Johnson all give great performances. The standout for me was Jessie Buckley for sure, because she had what to me seemed like the most difficult material in the film. Her scenes were really emotionally difficult for me. They really got under my skin. The whole tone of this film got under my skin. The sound design combined with the intimate way things are shot just pull you in and do not let go. Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog had a very similar effect on me. The Power of the Dog centers around a rancher named Phil, played by Benedict Cumberbatch, who is as charismatic as he is antagonistic. When his brother George decides to marry a widow with an older teenage son, Phil begins to spiral and make a conscious effort to torment these newcomers to the family, especially his new sister-in-law. There's a whole hell of a lot more to it than that, but this is kind of a hard movie to describe. It's very much show, don't tell, and it completely trusts its audience to be able to read into what's going on. It demands your full attention and deserves it because there's a lot to unpack after this one is over. It portrays emotional abuse and the way that someone's very presence can drive you insane in a really effective way. The piano scene between Rose and Phil almost destroyed me. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Benedict Cumberbatch, Jesse Plemons, Kirsten Dunst, and Cody Smith-McPhee are all great in this. As many issues as I have with the Oscar nominations and snubs this year, I was very happy to see that all of these actors were nominated. They totally deserve it. Beautiful score by Johnny Greenwood, who also worked on Licorice Pizza and Spencer. A talented and busy boy. Great job. Number 7, Dune. You guys already know how much I enjoyed Dune, so I will keep this brief. It's Dune, it slaps, it's the most cinematically rich and creative tentpole blockbuster I have seen since I don't know when. A+. Number 6, Titane. Titane is another absolute banger from Julia Ducournau, and the Academy is fully out of its mind for not even acknowledging this one. It won the Palme d'Or. Are you guys actually insane? Is it because a lady has sex with a car? A lady had sex with a fish and you guys gave that movie Best Picture as if you somehow were going to be more open to weird shit in the future, but no. You guys just conveniently forgot that this ever happened. But much like Ducournau's last film, Raw, I can never forget. While Raw is narratively very straightforward, Titane is quite a bit more abstract and does benefit from multiple watches. I'm sure that the lady has sex with a car aspect of this film is enough to capture the interest of many, but I promise you that that may very well be the last thing that you're thinking about when you've gone on the full ride, so to speak. All the technical aspects of this film are beyond impressive. The entire car show scene being done in one shot is mind-blowing on its own, but the most impactful aspect of this film for me is its emotional vulnerability. Agathe Roussel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, as the main character Alexia, gives an astounding first acting performance. The amount that she has to do would be challenging for any actor, so when I heard her in an interview saying that she had never acted before, I think I just blacked out. But I've got to say that with all the great 2021 acting performances I saw, both leading and supporting, if I had to pick just one that was my absolute favorite, it's gotta be Vincent Lindon as, well, Vincent. Apparently Ducournau wrote this part especially for him, and boy did this become the most fascinating character ever. I could go on for hours just about his work in this film alone, but to keep it short and not give too much away for those of you who have yet to watch it, what an absolute raw nerve, open wound, deeply vulnerable performance. Jesus wept. Number 5, Come On, Come On. I feel like almost nobody is talking about Come On, Come On, which is a shame because what a little gem. Written and directed by Mike Mills, Come On, Come On has a premise that on its surface may look to some to be some overly sentimental man with no kids learns how to like kids by hanging out with a kid kind of thing. Or worse, the dreaded white bummer. But don't worry, it's not any of that. This is a deeply grounded existential film about real life and all its problems through a gently optimistic lens. Not quite rose-colored glasses, but prescription ones that help you get things done. Joaquin Phoenix plays Johnny, a journalist who is tasked with taking care of his nephew Jesse, played by Woody Norman. Jesse's mother has to leave town for an extended period of time to help take care of Jesse's mentally ill father, and Johnny becomes Jesse's primary caregiver for the duration of her absence. Woody Norman gives one of the best child performances I've ever seen, and on top of being so real and convincing and so comfortable in front of the camera, he is doing a perfect accent and you would never know. The first time I heard this child speak in an interview, I almost did a backflip out of my second-story office window. This child was secretly British the entire time and I will never recover. His chemistry with Joaquin Phoenix is so natural and endearing, and as far as Phoenix's performance goes, I wish I could describe it in a way that doesn't sound like everything ever said about him already, but I promise he's done it again. Phoenix has gotten to a point in his career where he's so exceptional in almost everything he's in. It's like you don't hear people talking about his performances in any sort of great detail unless it's something very flashy like the Joker. And come on, he's just playing a regular guy who's trying his best, which allows him to display one of my favorite things about him as an actor, which is being an excellent reactor. There are countless moments in this that are so reliant on his ability to non-verbally take in a lot of the long-winded, odd, funny things that come out of this kid's mouth, and his facial expressions are so perfect and subtle in all the right ways. Joaquin has just become so reliably brilliant that I think we take him for granted a little bit. You just knock it out of the park over and over again to the point where nobody appreciates it anymore. Anyway, watch Come On. It's lovely and nice and good out of 10. Number 4, Nightmare Alley. My boy Guillermo has done it again with his readaptation of the 1946 novel Nightmare Alley. I had not seen the original 1947 adaptation prior to seeing this one, and I am so glad because I went into this knowing absolutely nothing. I heard Del Toro in a recent interview say that he basically wanted to make a movie that would please people who complain that they don't make movies like this anymore, and I think he succeeded in that regard. This film really does have many aspects that are reminiscent of films from the time period being portrayed. And it does it in a way that doesn't feel clumsy, like nobody's hamming it up in their performances, yet everyone is on the same page as far as what the vibe needs to be. They all understood the assignment, you know? I don't want to say too much about plot for those of you who haven't seen it, because the way this film is made, you can tell that they kind of don't want you to know anything beforehand. The way that the main character Stan, played by Bradley Cooper, is introduced is very mysterious. There's no context for what he's doing or why he's doing it, and he doesn't say a word for the first 10 minutes. So if you haven't seen the original or read the novel, you can just kind of get taken for a ride. My favorite production design of 2021, we really get to see that Del Toro aesthetic, especially in the funhouse sequence early in the film. The Rorschach test wood staining in the psychologist's office was just next level. Every corner of this film is dripping with symbolism about morality and fate that's there for you to notice if you look close enough, but if you don't catch it on the first watch, it still very much adds to the atmosphere. Having now watched both versions of this film, as much as I think the original is really good and do recommend it, I much prefer Del Toro's version, and I suggest watching that one first if you have yet to see either one. The storytelling is incredibly tight, the characters are much more vibrant and fleshed out, and I'm so glad that I got to experience his ending first. It's so perfectly handled, and Bradley Cooper's performance, which is excellent throughout the entire film, just makes the film's final moments absolutely transcendent. Not to do the meme or anything, but I mean...
What a picture. What a picture.
Good picture, yeah.
Number 3, Red Rocket. Well, if it isn't Sean Baker making one of the best movies of the year that isn't getting the mainstream recognition it deserves again. Red Rocket follows the story of Mikey, a 40-something who has returned to his hometown to start his life over after he has lost his place within the LA porn scene. I really cannot think of another filmmaker right now who is doing exactly what Sean Baker is doing with his films. Sure, there are plenty of movies where you go, oh wow, that was pretty true to life, and then Sean Baker's like, hold my beer. Or actually put my beer down, you get to be in the movie too. Similarly to his previous work, Baker uses a mix of professional actors and people who are very new to acting. That, on top of shooting in people's actual homes and other public locations where they may or may not have had a permit, creates a level of authenticity that's rare outside of documentary filmmaking. Another rarity is that this film does not have an opinion. It's just telling you a story as authentically as it can, and the rest is up to you. The main character of this story is a deplorable human being. I mean, he's awful. But he's also very charming and funny and all of the things that this type of person is when you encounter them in real life. The things that Mikey does are horrendous, and the film trusts you to understand that and doesn't feel the need to frame it in any type of way that would further hammer it home that he is bad. Part of Mikey's journey of manipulating everyone around him includes going after an underage girl and starting a relationship with her. The guys that do this type of stuff in real life are rarely the mustache-twirling Harvey Weinstein hyper-successful villain type. They are 9.5 out of 10 times this guy. A buffoonish, bridge-burning pain in the ass who would be super successful right now if everyone else would just stop being so mean to him. We have all met this person. Simon Rex's performance is really something else. He is just so infuriating. I mean, his ain't life grand grin he has while riding his bike is just too perfect. You just want to punch him in the face. Red Rocket was shot by Drew Daniels on 16mm and just looks beautiful. Baker's films tend to have this vibrant quality to them that's unique within the context of the subject matter that he typically portrays. Similarly to the Florida Project, the way that things are shot are always with the intention of extracting their beauty rather than emphasizing their imperfections or decay. This film is so rich with all of these little true-to-life moments that really stayed with me, and I don't think I've really ever stopped thinking about this film since I first saw it. Sean Baker's just one of the best filmmakers working right now, period. And I already cannot wait to see what he does next. Number 2, Drive My Car. Drive My Car was directed by Ryosuke Hamaguchi, and it's getting a large amount of buzz right now, and that makes me so happy because it really is something special. Its overall plot is about as difficult to explain as The Power of the Dog without feeling like you are grossly oversimplifying it or spoiling it, but it's basically about a grieving man who takes a job to direct this play, and, he can't drive because it's their policy to not, so before that, his wife would, never mind. Oh, and then there's this other guy. But it's also about his driver, the first guy, not the second guy, even though she does drive them both at one point. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that this is a good movie. Yeah, it's one of those where I can't really say too much outside of please watch it. The plot itself really is very simple, but it's the exploration of these characters' inner worlds and how that affects the way that they interact with one another that takes up most of this film's 3-hour runtime. And before you go, oh my god, not another film about actors and show business, it very much, at least to me, removes a lot of the glamour from that subject matter and highlights the more mundane aspects of preparing to put on some sort of a production. It romanticizes storytelling while demystifying the more practical aspects of getting that story out into the world. It's a gently paced film that takes its time with everything without ever feeling like it's dilly-dallying in the slightest. I saw this one in a theater and I did not feel the 3-hour runtime like I thought I might. I was just so deeply moved by this film, and I hope that you're able to find time for it. I know 3 hours can seem a little daunting, but I promise that it's worth your time. So, I know that I already said The Beatles Get Back was my favorite movie of the year, but it is technically a series, so I have to pick like a movie. But that's actually not a problem at all, because there is one movie that I saw last year that absolutely stole my heart. And that movie is Pig. For people that have only seen the trailer or maybe read the plot synopsis, it may seem like this is something that they've seen a million times before. Maybe it's like Taken with a pig, or a revenge film with a similar flavor to John Wick because there's an animal involved, or simply a quirky film made all the quirkier by having Nick Cage in the leading role. No, and no. This movie came out of nowhere, and it's a goddamn masterpiece. It takes the familiar cinematic framework of a dangerous person being wronged in some profound way that may justify seeking violent revenge, and subverts it. And it's done in such a way that makes it almost impossible to predict where it's going. Similarly to Drive My Car, it is a movie about grief, but with so many other themes seamlessly branching off of that. The way that it uses the art of cooking as a pathway into talking about the human experience in a broader sense really spoke to me. I love cooking, and I take it very seriously, maybe too seriously. It's my other major form of self-expression besides this channel. So all of these character interactions about relevance, authenticity, and integrity within the context of cooking food really got to me, as did the ending, after which I sobbed for about 20 minutes. I cry at movies fairly often, but it's typically like a few tears. A little sniffle. This was a level of crying that would lead an onlooker to believe that Nicolas Cage himself turned to the camera just to tell me that I was a failure. It was bad. And speaking of the one and only national treasure, he is perfect in this. I get really tired of seeing the inevitable, "Oh, I forgot how great he was" discourse every time he knocks something out of the park. You should never forget. How about that?
I am not on any social media. It's antithetical to my beliefs.
Also, hats off to Brandy the Pig in a beautiful supporting performance. She's a good girl, and she had never acted before. Pig is director Michael Sarnowski's first film, and I could not be more impressed with him. There are elements of story and character in this that on paper have no business working as well as they do. To choose such an unconventional way to tell this story and to do it perfectly on your first try, I mean, oh my god, dude. Pig is just a total magic trick of a film, and my absolute favorite of 2021. Thank you for watching.